What did I say? I want to say something about that. Oh, jot this down. I have discovered that when a kid will put, okay, so do you all realize that, again, okay, oh, yeah. Do you all realize that you could only have one yellow with like a lead-in with your own words, comma, and then the quote? You all realize you could just have one yellow.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm saying try to have two because that's usually easier for kids to be like, I'm going to tell me what's going on in the story and what part we're on, period, and then give the quote. But you could combine those. Okay? So you can have 2 boxes for yellows or 1 box, but I do believe you need a transition. Yellows have a transition, and they lead you in, and then they give you a specific about the story that is what that helps prove what you're trying to say. Okay? So that's what a yellow does. But I want to tell you that I have discovered that when a kid will do y'all know what I mean when I say paraphrase? Where they use their own words, and then a few words that they quote, own words, few words that they quote. When they've mixed quotes with their own words, their writing's better. So I basically say when you're writing this way, you have 3 choices. You can just do a paraphrase, where you just kind of explain. When they're passing by this island, the sailors are creeped out. That's a paraphrase. That did happen, and that's a paraphrase. And then you put the page number, 556, whatever. Okay, you can do a paraphrase. Not as strong. That's probably the weakest, but sometimes that's all a kid can do. They can just do a quote. They can say, when they pass by the island, quote, the sailors begin, you quote like the whole line of what the sailors are doing, and you do this big long quote. That's just a quote by itself. Or you can do what I did just now, or what I read just now, which is, when the boat that Rainsford is on passes the island, that is paraphrase. This is what's happening, but it's not word for word from the story. The sailors are, quote, jumpy, that's from the story. They feel something, okay, that's from the story, and they dread the place. So this person has mixed paraphrase with quote. That's the highest level of doing it, and I've just discovered, and it was like seriously an aha moment in the middle of teaching. I'm like, why is this paper better than this paper? And it was like, they are mixing their quotes and paraphrases, and it's a higher level thinking, and it sounds better. So I tell those you have 3 options: paraphrase, straight up quote, or mixing it. And I feel like the mixing it creates better papers. Okay? Okay. Okay. The rest of this, oh no, we just did it all. That's good. So here's an example of what you would do with 1 paragraph writing from a story. Now, okay, so now I'm going to move on. I'll just see what. Okay, I wanted to show you in this packet. Gosh, I'm totally running out of time. In this packet, this now is your free copy, your like open copy of them filling in the boxes with a more advanced way, adding more sentences, leading in, adding quotes, whatever. So that's what these boxes are. So the colored stuff, I cannot freaking find that copy. The colored one that I just showed you, sorry you guys. This one is condensed with no room to write. What comes after it is the same thing. These are the same thing. Just now, this is where your kids can actually fill it in. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. But this is, we're still, do y'all realize we're still just talking about 1 paragraph?
Yeah.
Okay. So now,
Advanced paragraph.
This is an advanced paragraph, that's right. So now, this is the next step. So once they get this paragraph writing down, then you can say, okay, now we're going to do an essay, and we're going to do 3 of these. When I say 3 of these, 3 body paragraphs. I am not touching today on intros. I am not touching today on conclusions. I'm touching today on, I've taught you how to do 1 paragraph. Well now, how do you do a full out essay? Okay, this see or no paragraph. Can anybody guess what the overall, okay, so when, okay, Just as a topic sentence, a green statement tells me what that paragraph's about. When you go to write an essay, you better have a big banner over the whole thing telling me what's the big overall point for the paragraph. So what a topic sentence is to a paragraph is what a thesis is to an essay. Okay, so kind of, I don't want to confuse you, but what the green statement is to the paragraph is what kind of a thesis statement is to the whole paper. Okay? I am not really touching on thesis statements. I'm so sorry, because obviously I have 20 stinking minutes left. And yeah. So, bottom line is this. A thesis statement has two parts. It has a position, and I also kind of consider it the overall banner, the overall point, the overall position, the overall what is the big thing I'm going to be proving, and it needs to just be one thing, which was Robert in Daniel Peace Can Die grows to be a man in this book. Okay, it's the big picture. Okay, can anybody give me a guess as to the paragraph we just did?
Yeah, it makes sense if you are.
Okay, yeah, but hold that up again. It's in this packet.
It's up 3 pages back.
Sorry.
3 statements.
These statements. Okay. Can anybody give me a guess or an answer as to what do you think was the overall point of that Cyrano paragraph? Because the guy wrote 3 paragraphs on it, but he had one huge point for the whole thing.
Admirable.
He's admirable. This is who we need to be like. So the position was Cyrano is admirable, someone that we should emulate. He's admirable. He's someone we should look up to. That's the big picture, and every paragraph proves this. Okay? Could you write one paragraph on just this? Could you write one paragraph on how he's admirable?
Yes.
Yes. And sometimes and that's what you would just do one paragraph and great. But then when you want to break it open, then you say, okay, you're going to prove this, but now what are the second part is you have a position, and then you have your key categories, or I also have called them boxes, which are kind of the divisions that show how Cyrano is admirable. Okay? I don't know what the thesis statement was. I think that paragraph that we looked at about Cyrano was the middle paragraph. What box did he use to show that Cyrano was admirable? Because he was courageous. So he decides to say, I'm going to prove that he's admirable because he had courage. And then he pulls the 3 quotes from the book that show that he was courageous. I can't remember. You could pull a lot of different things. Cyrano is very selfless. So that could definitely be what this paragraph's about. He's selfless, and he, oh gosh, selfless, courageous, and crud. There's so many different ways you could organize it. There would be a third paragraph. All of these qualities prove that. And so I end up saying, okay, now we need to figure out what a thesis statement would be if you wanted to do it that way. What's the overall position, Cyrano's admirable, and what are the 3 ways you're going to show it. You could also divide it up this way. So you can divide it up into characteristics. I would write that down. You can divide your key categories into characteristics. He was humble. He was definitely not humble yet. He had quite a bit of pride. But he was brave. He was selfless. And so character qualities. That's a good way to divide up an essay. Okay? We already talked about the growing of age story, beginning, middle, and end. But you wouldn't really say that in your thesis. You would say, he grew to be a man as shown in his immaturity at the beginning, his growth seen in the middle, and his total maturity at the end. I would write that down. That's a great thesis statement right there. Your kids would write those, could write about any number of books using that thesis statement.
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
What?
Can you repeat what you just said up in the tree?
The main character matures into a man as seen at the beginning. He's immature. in the middle, he grows a little, this again, we word a lot better. And then at the end, he becomes a man. That's not that great, but at least, sometimes the thesis statements don't sound that great, but they're clear, and I'm like, no, I'm happy with it. Again, thesis statements, just as your topic sentences, are not fluffy. They're not creative. They are clear, clear, clear. Clear, clear, clear.
And you want them pretty short. You wouldn't want to say, at the beginning, he is
No
immature.
specifics.
In the middle of the story, he is, that would be too much for a thesis.
Well, I'm okay with that, because that's, but what you don't want to say is at the beginning, when he's feeding the pigs and he's knocking over the pail, no specifics. But I would say, I mean, I try to get him to do it in one sentence, but sometimes that's hard. But it does need to be, the less stuff that's in the thesis, the more clear it is. And I'll just let you know, this is hard. This is hard. Some papers come out just like that. For example, Carry On Mr. Bowditch. That was a pretty easy one because it was like, he had these, he was hardworking. I could write 20,000 paragraphs on how hardworking he was. He was, what's some other qualities? He was hardworking, he was very smart, right? And so that divided up very easily. But then do you remember when we read, was it The Witch of Blackbird Pond? Was that the next one we read? It was like, shoot, this was hard. Because it wasn't cut and dried. And that's when, again, I just have to tell you, I remember spending every lunch hour for like 2 weeks straight, having kids bring in their thesis and going, nope, and we're hashing it out and feeling like my mind was blowing up. Because I'm like, I don't know how to get this into it concise. But the thing was, is I knew if they did not have a good thesis that was clear, they were going to wander. Like, I don't want to read. When I come to the end of research paper and I have 120 research papers to read that are 10 to 15 pages long, I don't want to read wandering. Because then that just means how many comments. I mean, oh my gosh, you're all around the, but I mean, I didn't want to have to write comments. I wanted to say, yep, you got it, you got it, you got it. So I would take the time to make sure the thesis statement was clear, but I'll just tell you that you will find it hard. So sometimes I choose books that are clear cut. Like when I first, like we're doing, Carry On Mr. Bowditch because it's clear cut. And then when it comes to like The Witch of Blackbird Pond, I'm like, let's just write a paragraph on what you learned. Because I'm like, I don't want to write a thesis for that, and you can do that. But then this is where I feel like my weakness is. When the kids go off to college, can they do it on their own? When some psychology teacher says, tell me, and they just give this very general and vague, and the kid's like, where do I even go? And that's where I feel like, because I hold their hand, hold their hand, hold their hand. But kids would come back to me saying, thank you. I think by the time they're in college, they're able to think that higher level thinking and can get it pumped out. But there's, yeah.
Just for clarification, yes. When you're writing the thesis statement, you are going to mention those 3 boxes in your overall opening thesis statement sentence.
Yes.
Okay, so you're writing your position and key point, and you're mentioning the 3 categories.
Yeah, your key point, your position is your key point.
Right.
So you want to say your position and your key categories.
That's all in one sentence.
That's all in one sentence.
Your key categories are your selfless, courageous,
are your 3 paragraphs, yes. Now, some teachers hate that. There's a teacher at Faith Christian who hates that and hated that I'm teaching kids to do that. She was the junior teacher, whatever. And I was like, fine. Then when they get to you, and it's basically the difference between a closed thesis and an open thesis. And an open thesis is just saying, Cyrano is so admirable and we should try to emulate him. You wouldn't say we because that's personal pronoun. And then they keep it open. And then their paragraphs can say whatever they want. What I've discovered though is kids will then bunny trail because they don't know where they're going. But eventually as juniors, if they've been trained this system, then let them have freedom. And they usually can within, because they've organized their thoughts, because they've done this so many times, they will be organized without having to spoon feed the reader. But I would say 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, spoon feed them, or spoon feed me. I want to know your 3 points. I want to know your 3 things. And then junior, senior, maybe they can say you don't have to list those, but I make them list it, especially early on. And if my junior and senior is new to this, make them list it. So they can always drop it. But if they don't, I'd rather them be clear and organized than all over the place, and this keeps them that way, I feel like, yes.
So you just mentioned your personal pronouns.
Yes.
That is so hard for kids to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know other moms if they experience the same thing, but English is also my second language, so for me it's even harder to help them change, you know, the sentence to the point where you don't have those pronouns.
Right.
So is there at the beginning, maybe do you let it slide?
At the beginning, I would say with these first couple, 6th grade, 5th grade, 7th grade, I'm okay. 8th grade, because English teachers, if they ever go to a school or a college, they will nail them. They do not want personal pronouns. So it's just a matter of saying people, they, one needs to, and so it's pretty cut and dried how to change.
They, it's just I, you, and we.
It's whatever would include yourself.
What you're trying to
Do a
do is
worksheet on
you're trying to avoid the reader from seeing your opinion.
Right.
You want it to be, this is the way it is.
What makes
This
sense.
is what people believe,
Yes.
not this is what I believe.
Right.
So the reds, when you say that's opinion, it's not your own.
It is your
Well, it
opinion,
is,
but
you
you're
just
hiding
say
it.
it's
You're hiding it and not saying, this really shows that we need to. No, you would say this shows that
Or
people
I
need
think.
to. So first person, if they kind of be first person, we all put ourselves first, or your I and we, anything that includes yourself. I, we, me, us, okay? And teachers don't like this in formal essays. Narratives, great. The first paragraphs when we're talking about what world they're going to do it, that's fine. But when you start writing academically, don't do this. Second person, think about, if you point to someone, second person, this is the you and your. There's only 2 of them, you and your. And teachers really hate that. Don't do that. Third person, think about really far away from you, is the they, he, she, her, him. Anything that does not include you, but or I, me,
Me or
we,
you.
us, me or you may use. This is where you want to camp when you're writing for me. Yes.
Going back to the thesis statement and putting your key categories in there,
Yes.
when my daughter was writing her essay at the end of last year, this was when she was a sophomore last year,
Okay.
when she was writing her essay and we put her key categories into her thesis, we had read that not only was she supposed to put her key categories into her thesis, but she was supposed to explain those key categories in her thesis.
I don't. Who said that? Like, what did you find out?
I don't remember.
Okay, so maybe it was a teacher that wanted you to do that or something like that.
I don't remember.
Okay.
It was so. I can't remember. But
Some
it was like you had to like say what
I
the key
wouldn't.
category was, and then like a little semicolon, and then explain it, and then
No.
a comma, and then
No,
that's
I wouldn't do that, because you're gonna do that in your paragraph. So it's almost like, you don't wanna keep it so general that I don't even know what your first, second paragraph is gonna be, but you don't wanna start telling me what's in the paragraph. So it's that middle ground of, I wanna tell you what my overall point is, and I'm gonna tell you what, kind of give you an overview of, I'm gonna talk about this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then then I'm gonna say, the first thing I'm gonna talk to you about is, and so then I'll just let you know that topic sentences from this are very easy to write. That is in, I think, yes, on the banner thing you're looking at where it has the big banner, I think that's very self-explanatory. But your topic sentences now are not your www.asia ones. You've kind of, yes, you may do that, but your topic sentences basically are restating your position, try not to be repetitive. Cyrano is respectable instead of that, whatever. You tell me, remind me what the position is. Cyrano is someone that everyone should emulate because of, and give me the key category you're talking about. Remind me of the overall position and give me the key category you're talking about. Remind me of the overall position and then give me the key category. So your topic sentence is kind of repeating a section of your thesis. Does that make sense? Biggest thing is try to get them to not be repetitive, because they will want to be repetitive. Now, just let you know, the example I gave is on Where the Red Fern Grows, from a student that was probably a 7th grader, 8th grader. I had worked with her for 2 or 3 years. So some of her topic sentences, you might go, but does it really match up? Like it's a little loose, but because I'd worked with her so long, she was alluding to things. And she was, and I kind of like that, because eventually you want it to not be so, but yet she never she proved it. Like at the end of the day, I asked myself, did they prove what they said they were going to prove? Did they repeat themselves? And if those two are like, yes, they proved what they wanted to prove, and no, they didn't repeat themselves, then if they mix a little reds and yellows along the way, I'm okay with that. But that's only after like 2 years where I've, and then if they start mixing it, I just take a step back and go, have they done these two things? If they have, I'm like, good job. So just when you look at that example, you might be like, gosh, I feel like that doesn't match up completely. I'm sorry for using that example, but there is some freedom in that. Question?
Okay, on your banner page.
Yes.
I want the answers to.
The three
It
things.
says, thus the three things most topic
Oh, yeah,
sentences
sorry.
always have are the following.
Sure. Okay. Can anybody get? I just kind of talked about it. You gotta have your what?
Position.
Position. Write that in. That's the first line. You gotta have your position, which is basically saying Cyrano is amazing. Cyrano is who we should be like. I shouldn't say we. Cyrano is admirable. What?
For thesis or topic?
This is your topic sentence.
But your topic sentence repeats your thesis. That's what we just talked about. Your topic sentence repeats your thesis because it's kind of like this. You know, a good lawyer will sit there and continue to say, so-and-so is innocent because there's no evidence that he was at the crime scene. So-and-so is innocent because, you keep hearing that, well, pretty soon you're like, well, he's innocent. That's what you're trying to do. You're basically trying to get the reader at the end of the day to go, oh my gosh, he was a stud. And so you kind of keep repeating it, but you don't repeat it the same way every time, but you do remind the reader. That's my overall point. Cyrano is admirable. So you say your position,
And then your key category.
then your one key category that you're dealing with, okay?
Transition.
And then a transition. First one, you probably won't have a transition, but your other ones, you would do a transition. The next quality that makes Cyrano is admirable is he was courageous. So it has a transition. So those are the three things that every topic sentence needs to have. And again, you guys, easy to grade, easy to check. Sometimes before I start reading the paper, I look at their thesis, I go straight to their thesis. I look at their topic sentence, look back at the thesis, okay, I got it. Go to the second topic sentence, look at their thesis, yep, they did it. And I just do that and I know, okay, this paper's organized. And sometimes I don't read it front to back at first. I go, I spot check that. Because if they got that part, then you know you're going to read probably a pretty decent paper. Okay? Okay, good. What else? Okay. I always have them box it out because sometimes there's one, I think I've used this example, there's one paper that someone did on Alexander the Great. And they basically wanted to say that he was had these bad qualities, but he was a good leader. So they kind of had this positive thing they wanted to say, and then they had these negative things they wanted to say. But I didn't know that, because they started with the www.asia word. They said, although Alexander the Great was a good leader, he was still arrogant, manipulative, and ruthless. Okay? So, quite honestly, I usually disregard this part. Because that's usually not what they're going to prove. They're just going to do this. But every once in a while, they'll be like, but I do want to show that he was this first. So then I'll say, well, box it out so I know what you're doing. So then this thesis would be an intro. Okay, so we put a little box there. Their first paragraph is going to be the positive things. He was a good leader. But then they're going to have these three negative things, okay, how he was arrogant, manipulative, and ruthless. And then their conclusion's probably going to recap this and say, a good leader's a good leader, but if you have these things, you're probably going to falter, and he did. And so then those are the last. So I always kind of have them boxed out because then they know, yeah, I'd like it to be 4 paragraphs. I'm going to talk positively at first, and then I'm going to do this. And you can do that. But I do have them boxed it out because I really feel like it gives them an idea of like, I'm going to have 4 paragraphs. What's my first 4 paragraphs? It's going to be positive things about him. Okay, I'm good to go. Then they write their topic sentence, and then you guys know, once you have your topic sentence, yellow, red, yellow, red, yellow, red. They've done it so many times. They can do this. Take it this little chunk, do it. This little chunk, do it. And all of a sudden now they have a 5-paragraph essay. And then they go and they have to write a 25-page research paper at school. This will be the hardest. Sometimes I take 2 hours to write 1 sentence. Because I do the 2-hour work because then this is a breeze. I'm exactly where I'm going. But if I don't do the 2 hours here, then I'm like all over the place, and then I'm like, shoot, I'm not making any sense. And then, you know, so I work really hard on this to get this, and then this part's easy, because this part I have nailed.
Would you tweak that thesis statement at all?
This one?
If that was the pattern that you were going to use in the paper?
What do you mean? What would you?
Well, you said that you weren't expecting for your student to write about him
But
being
as soon
the
as I see
positive part.
this, as soon as I see this, not this page, but I want it to be clear to them. I would figure it out pretty fast if I was reading that.
So you would let him leave it as it is?
I would.
And then, okay.
I would, just because I see what they're doing. There will be times, this is what will happen. Kids, so let's say the kid's gonna go, and this is why it's so important that they nail their key categories down. But like I did a research paper on like, let me think, on like, problems in our culture, whatever. And they could either do sports or something else. We had to limit it so that their sophomore, they wouldn't overlap. And so steroids was a big one, right? So they wanted to, you know, basically, and the thing is this kind of writing, I always try to have them prove something, even if it's obvious. So they don't just want to tell me about steroids. They want to say steroids are harmful, therefore you shouldn't take them, and then this is why. But this is what they'll do. They'll have a whole section on the history of steroids. And I'm like, that doesn't prove anything, and so it's just trying to keep them away from doing those fluff, like I have all this information, but it doesn't prove anything. So that's when it gets tricky, where the thesis statement, you can't put history into a thesis statement, really, unless you somehow correlate it. So that's why I have them do all this thinking to make sure that they don't have some floating paragraph where they're telling me the background of something, but there's no real reason why they should be telling me the background.
Isn't the background in the intro?
Yes, then I say, if you have all of that information, you put in your intro, yep. Okay, let me just tell you what else is in this packet, and then I'll be done. After the boxes, there's a thing called advanced transitions. It's probably about 3 pages in, maybe 2 pages in. Okay, so this is moving from first, second, last, or first, next, last. These are just little catchphrases. I would put them up on my computer, and it's basically advanced transitions is when you begin a sentence with what was just said in the previous sentence. So, not only was Alexander the Great arrogant, you put it on the beginning here, not only was he arrogant, that's what I just talked about, he was also manipulative. So it's this old information, new information concept. And so all you do is you go, not only give me old information, but also new information. And you can do it within paragraphs, or you can do it between.